All right. I think we're live. I don't know who's in the chat yet, but Jim, be cool. Give me 2 seconds. Fallbreaker Studios. Y'all know me. If you want to know like the inner workings, hit my TikTok, Fallbreaker Studios Kofi account, because I do have a new short horror story up called Antikythera. It's pretty hype. I love it. So y'all get one. Gary has got one, but Gary's came back to me because of a postage issue. So it will go out again tomorrow and you'll have it soon. But I'm not here to waste anybody's time because I think we all know why we're here today. Like, we're not here for a whole lot. We're definitely not here for no Jehovah's Witness stuff tonight because that's not what it's about. It might come up a few times only because that's how my brain works, but this is what we're here for. We're here for Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, 1979, the year before I was born. And I gotta say, it's already kind of up there. Like, I'm really trying not to rate it with my heart, but it's early. I think y'all need to go get it. The link is in the description of this video. Also, like, just go to Gary's Etsy, catch up on the trilogy as it stands so far. This is not an infomercial. This is a probably 45 plus minute conversation of me trying not to ruin this book for everybody because, okay, out of the way. For me, it's a fantastic book. I'm going into like the upper levels of the out of 10 ratings, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I don't want to like delay and like, I wonder if this is a book that I should get, or is this something that I should wait a little bit? No, get the book, because we already know from the first 2 volumes, like these will go through like we can talk about it freely. I will make time to talk about Dinosaurs versus Marsbots any day of the week. The treat of it all is that I get to like kick it with Gary sometimes, and I get to like pick Gary's brain about his process because it's one of the important processes. And what's up, Marsh? What's up, Jim? Scott, what's going on, man? Hello, Dee with the early message. Man, she got y'all beat by 5 hours. Holy mackerel, get it together. But Gary, it's time, man. Like, we got to discuss Dinosaurs versus Marsbots 79. I'm gonna say this conversation might be like in and out of time. Like, I just want to talk about the book, but more importantly, y'all need to go get the book because if you're into indie comics, it's definitely one you should have now before like it's kind of like Ray-Bans and like everybody has them. And I know I'm wearing Ray-Bans now, but it's all good. So I can't wait any longer. Gary, welcome to Fallbreaker Studios once again. One of my favorite guests.
Wow.
Round of applause for Gary Hodges, everybody.
What an intro. What an intro. Get them before their Ray-Bans. That's it. Thank you so much, man. That was super, super nice. That was,
man, the book is super nice, man. Like, once again, out of the park, man. Very happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I worked hard on it. So I am relieved and pleased that you enjoyed it. So
yes. It's you're 3 for 3 at this point. Like, the books hit every time. I think your approach, like your timeline, is interesting. How you went from the beginning to the end and then back to the middle. Mm-hmm. Because I don't doubt it, but you brought a lot of connective tissue into the first of the trilogy. Mm-hmm. But if there's more to go, does it just pop right to the next part or what?
Continues to skip around. continues
I
to
love it.
stick around. So yeah, they are not released chronologically. They're released. To be honest, it's sort of thematically. I follow a thematic thread, and I tell the stories that I think, in the order that I think best illustrates that, which may not be chronological order. I was just talking to Dee about this today.
Yep.
That if you're interested in the Dinosaur-Martian War, like the plot, you should read it just chronologically. Then you'll start to see how it's all evolving. But if you want to read it, as many people have observed, DvsM, Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, it's not really about dinosaurs and Marsbots. It's about people, and it's about character things, and it's about emotions, and it's about our lives and all that sort of stuff. If you're reading for the character stuff, then I would recommend you read it in the order I did them, because there is a method to the madness of like what order I'm putting them out.
Okay, so here's me as a reader.
Okay.
You where you showed up in the timeline like is right after Uzumaki, Gary, and that's very, very gutsy. Because when me and Ronnie were doing Uzumaki, I was like, okay. And still, like, I'm like, nothing can top this. I love what I'm reading. I love horror. Like, this is like fresh in my mind. But you came in and your story was so much more sci-fi than what we had really done to that point.
Right.
But it hit enough of the marks, like, to keep me invested with the horror. Like, I remember, it's such a silly thing, but I remember seeing the hole in the side of the building in Dinosaurs versus Marsbots 75. So much so that it wasn't until me and Ronnie were doing the live that I even noticed the UFO behind the house.
Yeah.
And so this installment is full for me of moments like that. There's so much to digest, and the suits in the heat in a car, I relate to that.
Yes.
The wild, innocent bystander whose consequences catch up to them in like the worst possible time, in the worst possible way, that like connects to the writer in me.
Mm-hmm.
You started this story with the sound of dress shoes down an empty hallway.
Yeah.
I'm in. Like, at this point, like, I know no matter what this story is about, like, this is a horror story first. Because as a child of commercial cleaners, I've been in so many empty buildings.
Yeah.
And there's so many what ifs in an empty hallway.
Yeah.
Different than being in a forest, different even than being in outer space. And so, like, for me, like, it pulled me right in, like, just from the beginning. Like, so and again, I don't want to talk about the book in chronological order, like, just from page to page, I mean.
Okay.
Because I do think that there's value in people getting the book and reading it that way. Okay. And I also feel like it gives me a little bit of elbow room to not really spoil too much, which I think I'm good. I'm
not worried about it. So wherever we go,
excellent. So here's one of my questions about your art direction, because this book you did lead us visually through 85% of this book. Like, it was okay. You know where we are, so come on. You know where we've been, so here's a little something in between. Like, this is the infancy of that. You use such stark whites, and when it's dark, it's like behind me, like it's that dark. In places.
That's right. Your screen right now is very DvsM. It is. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
That's not on purpose, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
So what is your, like, the safest places are the darkest places in your book. So how do you like differentiate? Like, what's the gamble in that?
I love that observation. I really like that observation because, yeah, when you think about it, it opens in this kind of stark, clinical. It's just a government lab, a government facility, right. And to me, it's the most creepy. You know, it's unsettling, and I try to. I mean, that is sort of where I wanted the character to be. I wanted the character to not be comfortable where she is. I wanted the character. I think there was a deliberate choice in starting with seeing this character totally alone and amusing herself in her own little world with everything else going on around her. You know, because I do think of her as a really lonely character. But in terms of, using the darkness and the light, I mean, gosh, there's so many directions I can go with that. The aesthetic of DvsM, so if people haven't read it, it's a strictly black and white comic. And some of that is a little bit of a wink because I was inspired in part by leaked classified documents with conspiracy lore and things like that, where, you know, you see these white pages with these things blacked out. It seemed to me natural, and I mean, it might seem a little silly, but to me it seems like, well, if you're going to do a conspiracy comic, it should probably be black and white. Like, you should do it in the aesthetic of a leaked document. So that was part of that. Totally. Another thing was, I've just always loved black and white, and I'm one of those people who I really no matter what comic page you show me, if you show me the uncolored inks, I always kind of like it better. I always have felt like color somehow muddies it up. It takes away from the beauty of just really nice inks. And so I even though I'm digitally inking, I love the aesthetic of that. I've always been, my whole life, even back when I was a kid and more traditional, it was always graphite or pen and ink. Like, that was my go-to. I never was particularly interested in watercolors. I was never super interested in markers. I was never interested in painting. I liked black and white. So when you're doing your own book, and you're the boss, you know, you don't have to worry about things like, well, does like the art guy want to do color, or does the audience want color? Whatever. I want to do black and white. Yeah. So that was that. In terms of just like the mood, though, and this will skirt along spoilers a little bit. As mentioned before, I wanted the lead character, Dr. Wagner, to seem very isolated and lonely in her professional life. Yeah. And there was something about doing this stark bright that she's in a lot of the time that made her feel more exposed to me. I think that's what I was trying to do with it. There's this, like, that there's no place for her to hide. And when you get
funny, this was one of my favorites.
Which one? Which one?
Wait for it to load up real quick.
Okay. But as it goes on,
Ronnie against the white curtain.
Oh yes, that's one of my favorite too, and it'll probably, I'm going to be doing a character creation and analysis video focusing on Dr. Wagner, just as I have for all my POV characters. That one will probably be the title card, her in front of the curtain. Without the text bubble, but probably that will be it. I just feel like that's a good kind of Ronnie image. I think that there's a lot there, but as it goes on, honestly, what I loved about it was when you get to the back half of the book, where a lot of the scary stuff, the horror stuff starts happening. It was that very childlike memory we all have of, you're trying to hide and you're trying to control your breath and be as quiet as you can, and your breath sounds like it's deafening in your head and they're going to hear me. Like, I wanted that idea of, she's trying to hole up and she shut off all the lights and she's trying to be as quiet as possible. And there's that sense of, whether it's hide and seek or a bad dream, this sense of inevitable discovery, that you will, eventually they're going to spot you. You know, you may be hidden for now and you're doing everything you can and trying to be as quiet as you can. And that to me, it's like, oh, well, I want just inky black. I just want it completely pitch black. I want you to know that her or other things are in the room, that you can't see them. It was very much that elemental, like I said, that the sort of the nightmare of you're in a room, you're hiding, you're under the covers, you're trying to be as quiet as possible so the boogeyman doesn't notice you. I wanted that.
So speaking of that, my favorite, the part where I felt like that flutter, you know, that flutter, like it's just like, oh, this is scary, is when the soldier just said they're here. Yeah. And Ronnie there was no need for any discussion as to what that meant.
She knows.
Shit was about to hit the fan.
And I wanted the soldier who, by the way, live reference model Corey Kerr, like I promoted him to staff sergeant. I wanted in him, I you know, this is like the headcanon for me. With the fear in his face, he's never actually encountered one. They're very aware that this is a thing that could happen, but he's never, like, this is unprecedented. This idea of the aliens showing up where they are, where they think they're safe. Like, I like the idea that almost no one in that facility, with one notable exception, has actually seen any of these things, has actually had a one-on-one encounter with any of these things. I think, and if people have read it, they'll know there is one man in there that I believe has, and he's the one giving orders to the rest of the soldiers. I think this isn't his first rodeo.
Sure.
But everyone else is like, what's happening? This is actually happening. And yeah, I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to, like, he's just saying, like, it's happening. This thing we've talked about that could happen, but no, we never really thought about it too seriously. Yep. It's happening. And she's just, that's where, and it's funny, I think up until especially that point, she's a little bit of a force to be reckoned with. I think she's the kind of person, if you work with her, you'd be a little like, ooh, I'll take the long way to avoid crossing paths with her. She's a lot.
Ronnie reminds me of Margot Kidder's Lois Lane.
There we go. Yeah, she is spicy. Like, she is prickly. Absolutely. Like, and if you do have to deal with her, you hope that it's all like professional, you know, and you're not butting heads. So, but I wanted to show that distinction between how formidable she is when it comes to office politics, even though she has a lot of weaknesses in that regard, but at least how terrifying she can be, versus actual physical danger, how she realizes, like, okay, this is a whole different, like, she's out of her element and mortified. So
yeah, and she don't take shit. Like, I'll leave it at that. Like, she's formidable.
She's confrontational. She will square off and say what she thinks, and she doesn't care how you feel about it. And, you know, she's a lot. She's a lot. And I think, you know, we've all known somebody like that. I think I've been something like that in a past life. I think I've gotten better, but I think, and there's an allusion to this in the introduction of the comic, that will get you places. Like, you can ride that for a while. There's a limit where some people eventually just get exhausted with you being such a pain in the ass. But you can ride that wave for a while. And I think that when we meet her in this story, that's about where she is. Like, she's not afraid to bust through some walls.
No, for sure.
But she's also not making any friends.
No. And that was back to the light and dark thing. She was as much a part of that uncomfortable light for the people that were in those rooms. Yes. Having those hushed conversations and, you know, practically like stumbling into each other after the first bitter guy. Like, you know, it was very like, yuck it up, small talk, move on, keep our conversations in the dark because we're safest there in our own little space.
Right. Right.
Even the
No,
word
absolutely.
bubbles represented that. Like, I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy. You know, if you had, so 79, for the people who haven't read it, the vast majority of the dialogue is, I would say, in the first dozen pages. And then it's very intense. It's a lot of conversation between scientists, basically, and arguments and debates and tension and negotiate. Like, there's a lot of that kind of thing, politicking happening. But then once that moves away and we get into basically the back 2/3 of the story, it's mostly dialogueless. There are some instances here and there, but you're mostly following a character go about her, again, isolated business. And I think you're seeing a glimpse of what her normal routine kind of looks like up until a point. Up until the point where things go off the rails, you're seeing like, well, okay, this is her in her natural habitat, where the beginning is her game face and her war face.
Yeah.
You know, like all of that. But.
Yeah. So I got, okay. This is another visual color direction question. And
yes,
you did black and white, so you know what we're about to talk about again.
Okay.
We're in the office, right?
Yes.
It's very clean black.
Yeah.
As that starts to deteriorate, and this might get a little long-winded, so please bear with me for a second.
Go ahead.
I noticed the work of the wall started to change. Like, it was first these clean panel shots, and then it went into like these big cinder blocks. But the more you stayed on the cinder blocks, they kind of got pitted. Like, that white was like slowly starting to bleed through. Like, there was exposure happening.
Yes.
And it immediately made me think of this. We see stars in space. Like, and it was just like I said, bear with me for a second. We don't realize the distance between all these things. But all the things that we think of that exist in that space is exactly like it's all happening like in this very tiny confined spot, which is our planet. Like, all the worst things that we think of outer space they're just here. Like, it's just us.
Right.
And when you shrink that down into an office building, it becomes very claustrophobic, because there's like real like work pressure in this place, obviously. But there's also like a spoiler, but we all know like these people are breeding dinosaurs to fight aliens. And we know what that becomes in 97. Like, we know how unhinged that is. But this is like,
and it's full bloom. In 97, you see it, and it's like its
exactly
peak. Yeah.
And the soldiers don't have control over it. Like,
no,
it's just a weapon. Like, hopefully we know the technique to get out of the way. But here it's like, you know, it's a pet project, and it's very personal and it's very lovey. But the eyes are the same. Like, this is that same eye I saw in that crate in the desert. 100%. So we know where this goes. But I noticed, like, as that white bled through that wall, I'm like, okay, like, we are officially going off the planet. This is that cinema moment where the camera is flipped upside down. You know what I mean? Like, buckle up. Like, nothing from this point forward will be the same as it was in the parts we read before.
Right.
And like, you hit, like, it's horror, because it takes you, and you get so many like white pages, Gary, and it works.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a good book, y'all. Like, it really, really is. So please, it's just a conversation I could have forever.
Oh, well, God, thank you. So I really value, and I can tell the people in the chat are being swept up in it too. I really value the attention you paid and the emotional experience you had with reading this, because it just means so much to me. Obviously, that's, you know, what you're hoping for when you're working on something like this, is that someone will will look for that stuff. So there's a bunch of directions I could go with that. I think, look, I made, every time I set out to do one of these, I try to make it even better than whatever I've done before. I mean, ideally you want them all to be, in a sense, equivalently good. But what you're doing is every time it's a refinement. What did I learn from last time? What do I want to do a little different? What do I want to push harder this time? Whatever. I really wanted to play with the black and the white this time visually. I really wanted to see how far I could push it. And especially with the kind of subliminal storytelling. And some of it was, again, to use a word I used before, a little winky. Like, for example, the fact that I see Ronnie as very much a liminal character where, depending on your vantage, she's either a very sympathetic, sad victim of circumstance who just loves her pet, basically, or an architect of a monstrous war machine that's going to unfold over the next few decades.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, like she's either this sympathetic woman who's like a woman in a male-dominated office environment it doesn't quite fit in, and everybody at best is trying to make peace with her, and she's had to just butt heads over and over and over to get what she wants. She's not taken seriously. So there's all these things where you're like, ugh, like this girl, I just want to, give her a hug and pat on the back and say she's doing fine. And but on the other hand, she's like mother of dragons, and she's part of a war effort that she's somehow trying to find a way to be critical of while being instrumental too. Like, I think that she's sort of she's a complicated character with mixed up allegiances. And to me, again, the simplest way, kind of like, well, this is a conspiracy comic, so it should be black and white. To me, the way I always, in my earliest sketches of Ronnie, she was wearing a plaid jacket. She's black and white. She's a little bit of like, she is right in the middle. She is a little bit of everything. Everyone else is kind of one or the other. Peter is very much in the shadows, sort of a dark figure in the corner of the room. He's kind of this, he represents a different kind of interest. Some of the scientists are just in white lab coats, but she's a little different. She's somehow in between. Her animal is somewhere in between. Her
in front of the curtain. It's like
right.
Tailored. It's like controlled black and white.
Yes, and I think that's part of what you're seeing is whatever mood I'm trying to reflect throughout the story, I'm trying to give you that vibe and express it visually, even when it comes down to what's in the room behind her and what are we seeing and what is the value difference. But yeah, and I also, and this is part of a technical thing that I didn't expect anybody to really pick up on, but I liked the idea. She's in this dark room. She shuts off the projector, so now it's very dark. And everyone
specific projector in real life, by the way, like
yes, a very specific accurate Kodak projector. But I want it. So she shuts off this projector. She's in a dark room, and the person she's talking to, Dr. Kovitz, and herself, and the reader, your eyes are slowly adjusting. And so like there, you're starting to pick out what's actually in the background that you couldn't see before. I just thought that would be a fun thing, so that was part of what I was doing. And then the last thing you brought up with the dinosaurs. Now we've seen with this book, the earliest efforts at this program. Not quite the earliest, the very, very early stages.
Right.
In this book, we see what is perhaps the best attempt they've made. It still has problems, but the best effort, the best result they've ever gotten. In 97, you're seeing, again, this fully blossomed endeavor with healthy animals that are doing all sorts of crazy things in the field of battle. I thought that was, after I did 97, I knew the natural next step is to talk about the dinosaurs. Where are the dinosaurs coming from? What's the deal with the dinosaurs? So you have to go back to where they came from. And to me, I remember when I first read Jurassic Park, my reaction to it was, there is a story here they're not telling that I think would maybe even be more interesting, which is how many tragic failed attempts it would take to get to living healthy dinosaurs in a park. That this would have been an arduous process of trying to figure out how to make this work. And you would have generations of dinosaurs that you couldn't even gestate. And then you'd have dinosaurs that were crippled. And then you'd have dinosaurs that had severe neurological problems. Like it would take so long to get to the point that we see in the movie of just dinosaurs in a zoo. And I thought it's not a good story for if you want a dinosaur story, but it's a fantastic story if you want to tell the story of the person who's working with those animals. And that's where I decided, like, okay, well, 79 is going to be about that. 79 is going to be about scientists trying to get this thing off the ground and how ethically and morally complex that would be, you know? So
there's a lot of points where it should have stopped before you got to Opie. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a huge case to be made for, like, okay, guys, like, we've done enough.
Pencils down, like, this isn't working. Let's stop. Yeah, this is crazy. And plus it's a crazy idea, you know? And I also wanted in this book, everyone talking about this openly.
Right.
Like, they've gotten orders from on high, like, this is what you guys are going to work on. Right. And they're all like, why are we bothering with this? Yeah. Like, this is the most cockamamie idea I've ever heard.
You know, because even Ronnie was in the office said they're flesh and bone, like, they can be killed like any of us. Why are we
overthinking this? Why
they're
are
supreme technology, so we have to go back and be ultra primal. Like,
what is the logic here? And that's why I loved, to me, like, there are points where, of course, you write a character to represent what the audience may be thinking. And that was part of why I have Dr. Wagner at one point saying, why don't we just figure out, like, show me one of their corpses so I can figure out how they work. Like, so I can figure out their metabolism, so I can figure out how they're, like, we can come up with a nerve gas. We can come up with a disease. Like, if we could, rather than try and make a dinosaur, why don't we make a plague? Why don't we make a nerve gas? Why don't we make weapons? Why don't we, why are we taking this bizarre route? And that's something where by the end of the book, she and the reader realizes, like, okay, this is actually more complicated than it's an animal that can maul or gobble up a dinosaur. Like that it's not like, if that was the case, we could have grizzly bears, we could have dogs. It was also why, for example, and then I'm gonna stop because I'm skipping around now, but why, for example, I had canines, military canines in the book to show that it's not an animal thing. It's not that the aliens are thrown by just an animal, that they understand how to deal with us, but animals are confusing because they encounter dogs in the book.
Right.
And the dogs are not a problem for them, like, at all.
No.
For some reason, the dinosaurs are. And so I think it was Scott Serkland who had said, I went into this wondering, where did the dinosaurs come from? And I came out of it realizing, like, that wasn't exactly the right question. The question now is, why are the dinosaurs useful? And that's something that, of course, I'll be exploring as the series goes on.
Yeah, but he's totally right. You can get hung up on this one thing when you miss, because like you said, there's a quadrillion animals that you get to before you get to dinosaurs that would seem to be more formidable.
Would be way easier.
Right.
Way easier. Yeah.
Yeah, like, why not like an army of, like, silverbacks?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Anything.
Absolutely. Right.
But
so what's the difference? What's the difference?
But there is.
That there's a difference. And because we see the first time an alien crosses path with the dinosaur in this book. And you see that there's something is, they are vexed. there's some conversation happening between the aliens when they see there's something there's a unique reaction to them, and it confuses everything, and that's what persuades Dr. Wagner in the end of like, okay, maybe we have something here. there is somewhere, but I was poo-pooing this whole thing until I saw the things I saw.
Right. Run me a hypothetical. Run me a hypothetical of what exactly we're talking about here.
Right.
But okay. So I've seen Dee mention it a couple of times, and a couple of other folks have in the chat. The chat, by the way, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. Like, I'm so engrossed in like these questions I've had for the past 8 to 10 days that I'm just so ready to get into it. But thanks for hanging out in the chat. Like, I really appreciate it. But Dee says,
thank you for everyone showing up. I love slip.
It was that's the point where I'm going to like try to really not talk past. Yeah. But that was all that was on 2 pages, and I think that speaks to something that you don't really hear, or I don't really hear a lot about in like comic execution, is sound design. Yeah. Like, all your sounds worked. I knew Ronnie landed on her heel first when she walked from her shoe made. You know, I knew what the blood sounded like. I knew what the explosion sounded like, and the way that they got more and more brittle at the end. Because, you know what I mean? Like, not only was it the explosion dying down, but you also were like absorbing this like with your shocked ears. Yeah. It was money. And I think that you and I talked about it in one of the videos that you and me and Ronnie did about how like good comics are good, but execution is what takes it to the next level. Yeah. And like, that is like, there's a lot more to a layout than what your panel boxes are going to look like. Like, like there's more to it. And the gas visions have been fantastic. Yes. The gas visions have always been good.
Thank you. I really love doing the gas vision in this one. So for people who may have read DvsM 1975, the aliens have weaponized a gas they used to use for abductions. They use and if you read abduction lore, people have, strange versions of it where they knew something was there, but it didn't look like an alien, but they knew it was. They're confused visually. They're confused about where they are. Space looks strange. Like, there's this kind of, they're having a kind of an altered state experience. In DvsM, my proposal is that when this war broke out, the aliens just weaponized that. They made it 10 times stronger, and they use it in the field to confuse human resistance, and ideally start forcing some fratricide, like start forcing some people just having psychotic breaks and attacking each other, which makes it even better and easier for them, which we might even see a little bit of in DvsM 1979. But I love opportunities to draw scenes where, there's where someone has been hit by the gas and we're seeing what they're seeing. It's a lot of fun. It takes me out of my usually very conservative, what I would consider a very conservative and more meticulous art style. Allows me to kind of be big and silly, and not silly, but like over the top and more elemental and not beholden to what something would really look like. I can now have dream logic and dream visions and things. But also I find them both with Ruben, who got hit with it in 75, and the character that gets hit with it in 79 being a little slippery. It gives me a huge opportunity to do really concentrated character work. Yeah. Because the hallucinations are always very individual. They're very personal.
Yes.
So what they're seeing tells you so much about them, I think. Like, really, you get just raw, unfiltered character feelings and history and thoughts and attitudes distilled into this sort of funhouse mirror.
Yeah, it's
dream
total
life.
Vision Quest. Like it
Yeah,
really is.
yeah.
It's like,
And I love it. And it was
overcome what
fun.
scares you the most.
It was fun in this one to think about the differences. So in the first one, you have a man in black get hit by it, who's basically he's a war vet.
Yeah.
You know, and so what kind of things would he see? With this one, it was fun to think about not only someone who's extremely conflicted about their work and very tied up in knots inside. I just imagine her kind of in a constant clench, you know, just like never fully just exhaling.
Right.
But also someone who's brilliant. So
Right.
how would their hallucination be different? Like, what would they see? What was on her mind? And that's always the thing, too, is what was on their mind right the hour before she got hit or the hour before that person got hit? And how is that going to inform the hallucinations he or she is having?
Yeah, it's the feathers in that there's so many individual pictures in this book that just work, but like this is artistically it's great. As a writer, it's a textbook, and it's so when I write everything.
Mm-hmm.
But stories like this are a good reminder that you can tell a story as a writer without spewing every detail, and it works.
Yeah,
it totally works because it was written like it wasn't just a bunch of cool pictures. It all had a purpose. Like you just what is there to say? Like, and I guess that's the money. That's the money for me is like, okay, you saw it. What would you say other than just I can just tell you exactly what I saw? It's the same thing that Jenny was going through, but it's like this warning is getting louder. Like the warning from 75, and the warning from 79, and the warning from 97, or no, excuse me, became the reality of 97.
Yeah.
But there's so much space in between 79 and 90 and 97. But look at how much is happening in that 4 years of 75 to 79.
Yeah.
Like, it is off the charts. Like, this book is a fear response. And I think that's what makes it work. Is like you are unprepared for what's next. So you better try to come up with anything that you think might work. Nuclear bomb, nope, out of the question. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So what else you got?
Right. And I think with what's happening in 79 outside of the book, like what's going, I think they're chasing everything. Like I think there's a lab somewhere looking at weapons. There's a lab somewhere working at like they're betting on every space on the board. Like they don't, because they are desperate. And I love that the fear response thing you said, because that's a lot of what I was imagining. And I think it's especially when you read the end of 79, you see where we end up.
Yep.
I think it will, first of all, it explains how you end up with 97, like how you get there. But also any of the other things I'm going to show you for the future, because every other book is after 79 now, all the three remaining ones.
Right.
To see that, I mean, in a way, everything post 79 is the fear response. Like 75 happens, in between 75 and 79, we are freaked the F out. Like things are going badly, really, really badly. And there's I was like, we finally have gotten a hold of something like this. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is a way to get out of this. And now it's just all like, put everything behind this. Put everything behind this because we are, again, freaked out. Right. And I think it's something I'll get into a little bit when I do the Dr. Wagner video. Ronnie, to me, is an example of someone who was conflicted and thought about it in a little bit, thought about her work in a little bit of a complex way until she had the events of this comic. And I think now she, as an individual, is all fear response. She saw the horrors of this. She saw something that made her think maybe this is the way to go. And now the rest of her life is going to be on this. Like, she is 100% in the tank and not questioning or thinking or being thoughtful or conflicted anymore. And I think that will be a little bit of the sadness of Dr. Wagner when you look at her future life.
Yep.
Is that it made her uncomplicated.
Right.
For good or ill.
You know, it's there's this thing with Ronnie that is very, and so Star Wars is one of my favorite stories of all time. So I'm not comparing your book to Star Wars because it's two wholly different stories.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking about, I know what I'm saying. I think you will too. We all knew that Anakin, when Anakin was a pod racer, we knew Anakin was going to become Darth Vader.
Right.
When Anakin was afraid to leave his mom, we knew that he was like the scariest Sith. We knew it.
Right.
But in Attack of the Clones, you say, oh my God, Anakin Skywalker's Darth Vader, but I didn't know he was gonna mutilate babies. Like, you know what I mean?
Kill a whole village. Right. Yeah. Right.
So it's like this. I feel like that Ronnie could end up in one of those pivotal moments because it's one thing to be like to watch a YouTube video of defending yourself in a boxing match, but like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Right.
There was no solution in a building full of the supreme military men and their security. There was no solution in that building for what happened. No matter if they got a few pieces of skin or not, they were in an unwinnable fight.
Right. Right.
So now you have to turn the tide because there won't be anybody left, but at what cost?
Right.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a lot. That was a lot of the intention of this story, was to pose that sort of question, like what, but also being sympathetic. You know, when people are scared. Yep. When people really feel they're in danger, what will they do? But it also calls into question. See, this is, and I'm not going to spoil anything but it makes me think of Scott's thing about. I was asking maybe the wrong question. One question I think Jim Lujan has been asking is, what are the aliens actually after? And I think that also is an important question. Like, the humans in the books keep talking about it like it's a war. Is it a war? Like, what? Like, or is that just the name we're putting on? What are they doing?
Right.
Why are they doing it? What are they up to? Like, what is their agenda? And I think that's also something. It's an example of. What are the questions we really should be asking in this story that now, once people are freaked out, like Ronnie, that you're not asking anymore? Wait, let's see here. Is Marsh part of the conspiracy? That's shocking. That's a shocking exclusive.
Gary, man, like, I'm gonna flip through of Dinosaurs versus Marsbot 79 because we're coming up on an hour, but at the same time,
oh my God, already?
Wow. Yeah, we're at 49 minutes. So I think I can ask you this because this is something that's come up a lot.
Yes,
and it's just been a curiosity of mine.
Okay,
why do? If you can't answer, don't answer. Okay. Why do some of the aliens wear like full suits with like space helmets? Yeah. And some of them don't. Like, so it's obvious that they can function in our atmosphere. but why do some mask up?
They can breathe our air. The ones that wear the helms are the befuddler units, the ones that are dispensing the gas. And the helm mostly functions, while the aliens are unaffected by the befuddler gas, like they can inhale it.
Yeah.
It is, I think, mildly an irritant, and they have trouble seeing through it. It's very opaque, these clouds of gas. The ones with the bubble helms, the ones that are actually dispensing the gas, they have like a HUD system that allows them to see through the clouds they're making. It allows them not to be inhaling.
It's strategic. I got you.
Yeah, it's just purely because they're the ones right there dispensing all this gas everywhere. And very quickly they would blind themselves and they wouldn't know where they were, and it'd be noxious a little bit. Yeah. But yes, no, that's a good observation. It's a good question. It's a question I've gotten before, so I'm glad I could answer it. Yeah.
Excellent. No, I feel like that's a good piece of trivia for us to have on the channel. Like that's a cool. I love the design of the aliens because they are gray aliens, but they do look a little different. Like
they're a little different. I put my own little spin on them. I think most
they definitely look taller than what you saw on Unsolved Mysteries. You know,
a little taller. Yeah. That was another thing, just revealing my own little fun I had while drawing it. I liked that Ronnie is significantly smaller. The lead character, Dr. Wagner. Yep. So it's Dr. Veronica Wagner. People who are friendly with her call her Ronnie. So that's all the same person when you hear these.
But also, what's up, Ronnie? I don't know.
Yeah, also Ronnie.
What's up, Ronnie?
We're going to do Crimson Owl soon. So different Ronnie. Though Ronnie also makes a cameo in this book.
He does, absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I liked that Dr. Wagner is significantly smaller than any other person she comes across in this. She's always looking up at people. They're always looking down at her. She's a little diminutive girl, and like everyone else is just a big full-grown man. And she's just always the smallest person in the room. And then, without getting too into spoilers, eventually she finds herself in the proximity of aliens, and she towers over them. So I kind of enjoyed that, and there's one scene in particular where she just seems like this monstrous large figure wrestling around with this little alien that I kind of enjoyed after seeing a whole book of her around human characters where it was, a size reversal. But yeah, I do little tweaks. I think usually in the UFO lore, the grays have little nostrils, and I've gotten rid of that. I think they usually have 3-fingered hands, and I have them as having 2-fingered hands. I put my own little, but they're supposed to be recognizably grays. They are grays.
They're totally gray aliens. Yes. Yeah, I totally get it. They're just might be the ones that those people saw in Vegas the other day. Only those were much taller.
Yes, right. Yeah.
But no, I dig your detail. Like I noticed, I didn't really notice it much in 75 because I just kind of dropped in. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that was kind of by design. But in 97, you saw Jenny's camera, and it was detailed, and you could see all the rock faces in the desert, and it was it really was it was a reminder that these pages took effort and they took time, and you went into it and you looked at what was available at that time, and everything was on point. Everything was exactly what was available.
That camera was a nightmare. That camera was, I still have bad dreams about that camera and her camera strap, because it had this crazy pattern on it. And for some reason I had in my head, I couldn't just do a black strap. It needed to have this embroidery. I don't know why I do this to myself sometimes.
But in this one, and again, Jenny's camera was a big chunk of that story. Yeah. But it counted. This story, the Kodak carousel, is only in a few panels. Yeah. But I knew But like, just for the heck of it, when I saw the box, I just Googled like 1970s Kodak carousel, and it's like dead on the money. And it's just little things like that, like, are, it's added value. Like, there's really,
I want it to be, I want every blade of grass in these books to be as correct as I can human. I mean, this is why it takes months before I can even start drawing the next one, because I'm doing all this research. And I can tell you why. I can tell you why that effing projector looked right. Because I found a broken one on eBay and bought it.
oh, no.
And like, that's just to give you a sense of like the level of disease I experience here. Like, I am fine. I'm tracking this stuff down. So I have a physical reference I can look at and say, like, okay, well, because it's not even just, well, couldn't you find pictures online? Of course you could. But I want to know how big it is compared to a person. If a person's going to be interacting with it, and I don't know what angle, I might find a picture of it online, but what if I needed it at a different angle? I'm not going to stage my shot around a picture of a, you know, of a projector I found on Google. Sure. Like, that's not deciding the shot. I'm deciding the shot. So, you know, that's, I found through this process of DvsMs, if you are fine buying a broken version of something, it's $5, $10, you know, and then now you have the live reference. Now you know exactly what it looks like. So yes, I still have my broken Kodak carousel projector, period appropriate for 1979, out in the front room in a box, because I was looking at it and trying to figure out, plus I had to figure out, how do you load and unload this thing? In the comic, you see her break it down and pack it up to leave. And that's something, you know, it's like, so I'm sitting and reading the manual. How would I do that? If I was really doing that, how would you do that? So.
Man, Gary, this has been a story so far that, like, no bullshit. Like, and I hate all, like, we're homies, right? Like, but we all do comics, and this is like an A1 fantastic book. And I really do believe, like, you have some art here that could jump into a different dimension one day. Like, it's really that good. And not just the artwork. You put your effort into it. You put your heart and soul into it, and it shows. But this is a good story. Like, this is a really good story. And that, I believe, is what we're all after. Like, anything can look like anything, but is this a good story? Yes, this is a fantastic book. It's a fantastic wrap of the first section of your trilogy. Like, you've gotten from A New Hope to Return to Jedi, and you did fantastic. And there was no Ewoks. And
I never did an Ewok. There was no Jar Jar.
So exactly, no Jar Jar.
Yeah,
that alone is enough of a reason to buy the book. No Jar Jar.
We're not gonna have the Dallas. The Dallas. It was all dream. It was all dream. None of it happened.
No, this is good. I'm big into, and I think that there's a place for everybody at the table. I'm big into representation, and I don't believe that representation. I think that it's the thought that counts, and I think that to take this important work, to take this basically world-saving work of how do we come up with a weapon against the aliens, and to put that in what these guys would see as in a woman's mind in 1979. Mm-hmm. That alone is a backstory. Like, all these things, like, everybody has a reason to be where they are and to be why they are in DvsM 79.
It's funny. I appreciate that. It's funny. I didn't think about it just the way, again, like what we talked about in the beginning, how the way I decided what order to tell the stories. It was interesting that in the first three, I ended up with 2 female-led stories. And, just by
It was
the
the
way
the stories
I
were.
these are the stories. This is the order that should go. I obviously, and no one's a fan of clumsy representation. No one likes it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
cheesy.
I feel very lucky and fortunate and feel a lot of responsibility. And it's something I talked a lot about when I was writing Jenny, to do it right.
Yeah.
When I have the opportunity, and I feel very lucky to have that opportunity. This is, I'll be repeating a little bit of this when I do the Dr. Wagner video, but I just felt like Dr. Wagner for different reasons, just my vision of the character, and I trust artistic instinct. Okay, that's the first thing. I felt like this is a character who needs to be dismissed. I just felt very strongly, and it just seemed very natural. How are we going to do that? It's 1979. If she's young and pretty and female, like that's kind of all you need. That would get you there. And I didn't see a closer, a better, or better or easier way to get that kind of character into my story. And then once you make that decision, once it's like, okay, I think Dr. Wagner will be a woman, that actually becomes, and especially as a writer, you can appreciate this, such a rich opportunity for storytelling.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It really opens up different dimensions that you probably wouldn't have with, like, if you had two male characters in that room arguing, it would be different.
Yep.
It wouldn't necessarily be worse, but it would be different. And there was something about the dynamic of not only a man and a woman, but a man and a woman that appear to have had some sort of romantic relationship.
Yep.
That really opens up your storytelling opportunities. And so again, when I see the opportunity to do that, I'm very excited to do it. But I also feel a lot of responsibility. And I do hope future DvsMs, I want to continue to try and, when I see like it makes sense, like, okay, well, let's slide this demographic in. Let's slide this, like, just to make it make sense and make it seem like plausible and real world. Right. And also to open up like, well, this creates an interesting mix of now we have this sort of character and this sort of character. How do they bounce off of each other? I mean, it just makes the writing and the storytelling so much more fun. But again, the responsibility is big. Hey, Ronnie, good to see you. But the responsibility, I feel a lot of responsibility for it, because especially as like the white dude, like that's not, you want to stick the landing on that shit. Like I don't want to be, and this is also why, like, I talked about this a lot with 97. Like the main characters in that story are only women.
Right.
My proofreaders were only women as a result. Like, I need you to tell me, like, where does this sound like a dipshit guy writing a story about women, and what works and what does, like, I need this to pass the smell test. Yep. So, and I took that very, very seriously. And I imagine that will continue to happen in future DvsMs, depending on who I'm putting in. I'll just feel like, okay, I need to get
what does the story do?
Yeah, who's gonna know if I'm doing this right or not? But
just it's a story that got more personal. Like that was cool. Introduced to the world, now like introduced to the world in the backseat of a car with the Men in Black in it.
Yeah.
To just a lady trying to take some pictures out at the desert that gets sucked into this whirlwind, and now just like you've gone into one of these buildings in the background, and it's just people at work, but it's so much more than that. It's like the guy on Blade, like not to minimize it, but the guy on Blade, like when Blade goes into the building, he's going after Deacon Frost, and that security guard is like, I just work here. And it's like,
right.
Oh my gosh, you're totally right. You probably had like a double cheeseburger for lunch. And now it's like he's fighting like a vampire hunter. Like,
right.
Here we are, So,
well, that was something I think I first said publicly when I went on Artcasters a couple weeks ago. I mean, DvsM very much. When you talk about, well, what is DvsM? What's it like? What's it about? What are the ideas there? I think one of the overarching ones, and you just listed them, basically, is that even if you're talking about something as far out there as the Dinosaur-Martian War and Men in Black and aliens and biolabs and all this crazy stuff, at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road, even that would be a very human endeavor. And
Absolutely.
It would ultimately be a human story. Like, it wouldn't be a story about this dinosaur ate this thing. It would be a story about the vet that gives the dinosaur shots. And it would be a story about the guy who drives the dinosaur out to the field. And it would be about the other vet that heals them up after they've been injured. And it would, like, you know, and it would be about the guy who pushes a broom in the facility where they've got the alien bodies. Like ultimately, it's only going to be a story about people and all the things that make people beautiful and heroic and interesting and, you know, attractive to us, but also all their bullshit and all the things that make them contemptible and all the things that make them make things worse, which I think you see a lot of in 75. You see a lot of an already difficult situation perhaps being overcomplicated by people and their bullshit. You know, that if everyone could just play nice,
right,
maybe this would not be as horrific. But that's not how it works. That people, you know, they can be great and they can be one. And I wanted to see that range with Ronnie too. I wanted to see the element of, oh, these are just people being people with the office stuff. But then I wanted to see her with her animal, and you see, for the first time, her smile. You see, like, her look happy. You see her like that. And that's a big part of what I think 79 is about. When you get into, like, what is the human story here? It's, I think, how our best selves can be revealed by our relationship with an animal. How there is something truly kind of beautiful and kind and larger than just base kind of human motivations in care for something else. Like, that was something I was like, I want to juxtapose these things. I want to see, I want to see just, like, you know, you dealing with the dick at work. And I also want to see you coming home and rolling around on the floor with your golden retriever. I want to see both those.
Exactly.
Things, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and then your boss saying, figure out how to make your golden retriever kill these aliens, or
right. Yes.
Send us the body.
If it's not going to work out, we're going to have to deal with the golden retriever. You know, like, I mean, yeah, just this impossible, ridiculous situation.
Yeah, it's the most sophisticated way to make a bad situation worse. Like, exponentially every episode so far.
As if this all didn't suck enough. Now you're asking me to do this thing. Right. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Hodges, what would you like for everybody to remember about this book today, this conversation, your ride home from work?
Oh gosh.
Whatever. What do you got? What?
Well, look, I think, DvsM, obviously it's my passion project. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. 3 books out, 3 more to come. So we're more than halfway. I'm already starting work on the next one.
Wow, okay.
It is just, you know, the earliest kind of finding the edges of it. I'm with the puzzle, you know, when you build the corners, find the corners, do that. That's what I'm doing with DvsM 4. All of them, I know the outlines for all of them. I know what each one is about, but it's all, you know, as you pointed out, it's all in the execution. Like, I know the story I want to tell, but how am I going to tell it? And that's where it all comes together. And who are the characters I'm going to plug into it? That's where it matters. But yes, it's the story about the highly classified Dinosaur-Martian War that took place between the 70s and the early 2000s. It's a very extreme sci-fi horror concept. It has everything you would expect of something like that pitch. It's violent, it's scary, there's suspense, there's weird alien weaponry and tech. But ultimately, this is a story about individuals, their firsthand eyewitness accounts of this war. And that's where I spend all my time. I really try to write rich, interesting characters you can buy as a real human being, them through their eyes seeing the story of the day that changed their lives. And that's what you're always going to see in a DvsM. This is going to be the thing. This was the most important day in their life where everything changed for them. So you'll get both. You'll get sci-fi action, you'll get horror, you'll get suspense. But I think ultimately, and this is what I would hope most with the books I've already done and then the future ones, and when people someday, God willing, step back and see all 6 and see what I've done here, they say like that ultimately was a really moving, interesting story that just made me think about my life.
Yep.
Made me think about how I've been conflicted at work. Made me think about the times I fell short, or the times I rose to the occasion, or the times where I was put on the spot and doing the right thing would make my life worse, but I did it anyway. Or where I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go along and compromise my own morals and beliefs. And that's what DvsM is about. And I hope that people will get into that. That's where they'll hook in, that they'll love that.
Right. I don't know. I just learned that each book had a subtitle. I didn't know that.
I've just started doing it in the pitch. So yes, like if you look at the Etsy shop, I think it really helps. So the pitch has been an ongoing experiment for me. I've never known exactly how to pitch this series because I feel like the closest equivalent I can think of in fiction or comics or anything is the book World War Z. Not the movie. The movie's totally different. But the book World War Z, and if you've not, get the audiobook. It's the best audiobook you'll ever listen to. But World War Z is about the zombie apocalypse told from the perspective of there's like scientists and prime ministers and military people, and like it's just them. The war is long since over, and they're just sharing their account of their little part of it.
Yeah.
I stay away from comparing it to that because most people have seen the movie, and it's nothing like the movie, so it doesn't really help me. So pitching DvsM has always been tricky for me, and I've never known what to emphasize. Sometimes I do just DvsM. And I won't even say dinosaurs and Mars bots because I don't want people to think it's like Mars Attacks. But then other people really respond to that. And I know some people say, like, you're bearing the lead. I want a dinosaur comic. You should say dinosaurs. And also this idea of it's not one continuous story with one character that you're watching through. There's no star, really. Each one is focused on a different character. Now that I have 3, I find that it's very easy in the pitching to say, like, so this is DvsM. It's a series of eyewitness accounts of the top secret dinosaur Martian war. Each one is a different character. This one's about a man in black. This one's about a scientist. This one's about a woman who's just out taking nature photography, and she ends up seeing alien stuff she wasn't supposed to see. When I do it like that, people, I think, more quickly get like, oh, okay, I see. And then the next natural thing is like, oh, well, which one should I read first? And I can have that conversation. But that's also why I try to write them where you can read them, I think, in
any order. Absolutely.
Any order, because again, it's about these people. So if you think like, I would like to read about a scientist in a top secret lab, well, then start with 79. If you think like, oh, a story about a man in black, that might be good. Well, start with 75. I try to make it like that, where wherever you think, whatever you're into.
Yeah, you appreciate each book individually. Like if this was the only one, it would be totally fine. But same with 97, same with 75. Like for right now, like my personal favorite is 97. Yeah, because it was just a fantastic story for me. It was my kind of story. Yeah, but 75 is no less it's just different. It's just a different story. I can totally see that being somebody's favorite version of the story.
Yes.
This story, I could totally see this being somebody's favorite version because it's got mass appeal, Gary. You hit the boxes, man. Like, you did really good. Like, fantastic book. Like, it's really no bullshit. Like, everybody writes cool books. Everybody does. But this one is, it's a really, really solid story, Gary. Like, much more solid than you just happen across. Like, just check the book out. Like, highly recommend. If you don't know me, then you don't know that I know Gary. And so at that point, just say, oh, well, maybe it's worth checking out. If you know me, like, you've seen me and Ronnie's channels, I've stopped reading books in the middle of us reviewing them because they didn't hit the mark for me.
I know.
You know, like, this one is fantastic. Like, and it's as good as any other book. So,
well, thank you. It means a lot to me. I really value it, and I value your opinion, especially. You know, it delights me, and and you can appreciate this because you put work out there. Great work, by the way, and I'm excited that I'm getting something in the mail. I didn't even realize until you just said that when the video started. But
yeah, absolutely.
As you can fully appreciate, or any of us here who are makers, every time there's a fear of like, will people show up again? Will people care? Will people is this just a diary entry that's only interesting to me? Or is it a diary entry that people might read and be like, I felt that way too? Like, that's ideally what you're trying to do. And every time I have to tell, every time, I've only done this 3 times, but every time the fear isn't less. If anything, it goes up. Like, I think that, like, releasing this one was the most anxious I've ever been about putting a book out. And I don't know, I think it just gets, as you get more personal and more vulnerable and you put more of your heart into it, I think each time it feels like the stakes are raised. So it's so gratifying, such a relief, and so nice when that fear is disintegrated by, for example, like the things you're saying about it. It means a lot.
Good. It's good, man. It's rereadable. I enjoy like finding the Easter eggs. Like, I really do. I never celebrated Easter as a kid, but this is my new Easter egg playground. So I enjoy just picking it up and like looking at the pictures because you put some work into it and you can tell.
I wanted to tell you something. So speaking of Easter eggs, there are 2 sort of coded languages in DvsM. One is like a cipher language.
Yep.
The other is the alien language. Both actually are translatable, though I've tried to make it a little difficult, especially with the alien language. So people can't, I don't want, if someone does crack it someday, I'm not going to cry about it, but I try to make it so it's a little difficult. The cipher language is a little more attainable, but no one had cracked it. For years, people were like telling me, fans were saying like, oh, I was trying to work it out, or I think I had it, but it's not making any sense. Christopher Runciman broke the cipher language.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
And he translated all the instance of it in the 3 books and sent me to like, is this correct? And sent me all the translations. So everyone, just so you know, not only is it breakable, it has been broken. Christopher Runciman has read all the coded cipher messages in DvsM.
You got your own classified document about a classified document. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, man. Thank you so much for dragging me back onto YouTube. Like, this was like so money. Like, I'm so excited to like get back into it. And this was a fantastic book to start out with. And it's always a fantastic chat when you and I get to spend some time and catch up.
I'm honored and flattered to, because I was looking at your channel and it's like, you don't go on too often. So I feel lucky that you did for me.
No, so I'm trying to take this as an icebreaker, man. Like, this was a good chat. So I'll be doing some more Comics de la Muerte with Ronnie, of course.
Yes.
Definitely got to give this a proper a proper review and have you on and discuss it, because
I look forward to that.
You know, you say it's just 3 issues, but like these are dense books. Like
They're
this
fat.
is probably, you know, this is probably a year's worth of story from when we were kids. So you're definitely getting your value. Yeah, it's a good book.
79 is the longest one yet. It's 60 pages.
Yep.
60 pages of story. So yeah, you're getting a lot, and I do try to make it so it's rereadable, and especially like you said with the Easter eggs, there's a lot of little things to look at, a lot of little fun flourishes in the background, a lot of little details, and especially once you know where it's going. I like to play with foreshadowing. I like to play with, you know, little hints of where things are going. So
I can't wait to see what's next, man. I can't wait to start bugging you about when it's next and seeing Squatchy bug you about why you're not working on it. So
I know. Well, I've been talking to people I want to use as references for future characters. Like I see Josh Kimball in the chat. I've been telling him for a while now that I like the idea of him as one of the characters in the next one. And I've told you for a while now, I like the idea of you as a character in the 5th one. So hopefully you will still be a fan by the time I get there, and
I'm sure I will, man.
Excited.
I'm in it for the long ride now. Like you bought me with the first 3, so
okay.
I'll see it through to the end. Even if I complain about 4 and 5, I'll still be there for 6. But I think I'll be okay.
Okay, excellent.
All right, well, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us tonight. Like this was some good shit. And Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots 1979 is certified good shit, y'all. Go pick up a copy. There's the link. The link is also in the description. Find Gary on Instagram, Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Find me on Instagram, Fallbreaker Studios. TikTok is where I get into a lot of the culty shit, and it's kind of like my social base, but I'm trying to do something with this YouTube. So find us wherever we are and go find this book so we can talk about it some more. Like, good show.
Well, and support this guy. Support this guy, because I want a world where there's more content from this guy over here. So definitely follow him everywhere, and whenever he has something for sale, buy it.
Sounds good. Hey, y'all be good. We really appreciate it. Take care.
Good night, everybody.